It's the Real Estate Podcast, brought to you by ANZ Home Loans for financial well-beings.
And welcome back to another episode of the Real Estate Breakfast, talking your property news, your real estate 7 days a week. And as heard, as you know, on iHeartRadio, Spotify, Apple Podcasts and Amazon. Up to a Tuesday. Nice to get Monday out of the way. September the 17th this morning. And I just want to talk about these regional areas across Australia, because not all regional areas saw massive gains in the tree change property boom. But even the slowest growing regions have become pricier over the last 5 years. Now, according to Domain data, no local government area in regional Australia is cheaper to buy a house today than in June of 2019. You have a look at some of the smaller areas, like in New South Wales, Broken Hill had the smallest increase with a 29.2% rise to a median price of $210,000. And then you go to the other end of the scale, like Noosa and Victoria's Alpine Shire. They saw price jumps by 85% and 70% respectively over the same period. So quite a bit of a contrast there.
5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
Yeah, Bundaberg is go, and we're off to Bundaberg in Queensland this morning with Brent Illingworth. And good morning to you, Brent. Welcome to the Real Estate Breakfast. Were you a Thunderbirds nut like me when you were a kid?
Good morning, mate. Very clever. No, my parents probably were, that's for sure. I'm sort of mid-30s, so I do absolutely remember the Thunderbirds, and there's been a couple of modern takes on them in my lifetime, but I wasn't a massive nut for them, but I'm certainly appreciating what you're doing there.
Bundaberg rhymes with Thunderbird, so it was just a sort of a natural given for me to play with that. Does anybody sort of play on that with Bundaberg? No, maybe not.
No, but I might have to write that down for a couple of my write-ups in the future. It sounds like a good option.
We've done hundreds. In fact, we've done over 1,000 episodes now of real estate podcasts around Australia. Do you know we've never done Bundaberg from my recollection? So this is a first for us.
Wonderful. There you go. Well, I think a lot of people over the last few years, thanks to that COVID exodus out of some of the capital centres, have discovered Bundaberg. So it's a wonderful part of the world. Our secret is now no longer a secret, and lots of people are flocking here.
Perhaps, Brent, tell us a little bit about what's been happening this year in 2024 and what makes Bundaberg a little bit unique, a little bit more special. I know a lot of first-time buyers, they look at Bundaberg, they move into Bundaberg. So what sets it apart?
I think from a lifestyle perspective, Bundaberg's been put on the map in a big way. Usually when people talk about our part of the world, the conflicting part of that is coming to Bundaberg comes with the connotation that getting work has been difficult in the past, or at least well-remunerated work when you're coming out of a capital city, for example. But that has changed so much with the ability to work from home, with so many quality businesses offering that to their staff, their employees. So people moving out of Brisbane, Sydney, Melbourne, for example, over the last few years, and even into 2024 as Southeast Queensland continues to get more and more expensive, these people have decided that Bundaberg's a great place to especially bring up kids. Typically, retirees have realised that Bundaberg's the place to be for years and years in my career, but now it's that younger generation coming through, which is super exciting for me. I have a young family, and all the new faces I get to meet at schools and things like that is pretty incredible now, and they've all got different stories and all come from different parts of the world, but they bring something new to Bundaberg and contribute to our community, and it's been such an amazing community to grow up in as a young fella, so it's nice to be able to see it growing and progress all across the board at the moment.
Yeah, what is the population now in Bundaberg? And secondly, just a couple of weeks ago, we were talking about Mackay, and I guess Bundaberg would probably compete with Mackay a little bit for those first-time buyers. Now, you're the first city out of the two. They've got to travel further north. I wonder if that kind of makes a bit of a difference because you're a little bit closer to Brisbane.
Yeah, I think it certainly does. I mean, we're 4 hours on the highway, and the highway is slowly but surely getting better, certainly between Bundaberg and Brisbane anyway. I know there's been some issues north of Bundaberg lately with the Bruce Highway, but we've found that it's nearly at that point now where Gympie has been bypassed too, so it could drop to a 3.5 hour trip down the road, and that's certainly achievable for the average family to duck down the highway for a weekend away. So absolutely, that gives us some sort of advantage over the likes of Rockhampton, Mackay, and then of course further north to Townsville and Cairns. But from my perspective, I think the 4 hours seemed a bit of a stretch for some time there, and our rail system's great. Our fly in and out system's not so good. We've only got limited options as far as airlines go, but certainly the drive now has become much more simple. And I think we've surpassed Mackay as median house price goes the last few years, which is probably a relative thing. You're closer to Brisbane, and that southeast corner is, as I said earlier, very expensive now, and the shade that throws across the country is starting to grow. It sort of comes up as far as Gympie now getting expensive. So Bundaberg, Hervey Bay, Maryborough, this part of Wide Bay, it's well and truly on the map.
And what's the population?
Yes, of course. Sorry, getting back to your question. So as far as Bundaberg goes, we've had to reassess our population the last couple of years, which has been sensational. We were actually concerned, speaking to our Bundaberg Regional Council, that we had such an ageing population for a while there that it was trending backwards, but COVID's changed that substantially. We've had estimates of up to 15 to 20,000 people to grow into our area over the next sort of 10 years. So by 2030, it could see that kind of growth, which is incredible. At the moment, the township itself is still around that 85,000 to 90,000 people, a little bit more than that when you obviously encompass some of the coastal areas, and the Bundaberg Regional Council is over 100,000 people out towards Childers and Gingy and some of our hinterland areas.
All right, so we are in Bundaberg. Thunderbirds are go. We'll come back. We'll talk more to Brent about the area after this.
Why shout from the rooftops on expensive radio and TV when you can whisper straight into the ears of property lovers? Our listeners are all about bricks, mortar and property transactions.
Here's the rub. You've got younger people coming in wanting to be agents, and they look to what is being portrayed on television, social media with the, it's all about me, as you say, the ego. And I think for a lot of younger people, they just sort of look at this as the norm, the standard to sort of try and attain.
Correct, and that's the problem. It's more about the look and how they, what car they drive. It's not about the substance that's behind it, about the skill. And I think that's an art that's been lost these days, is the skill in the negotiation. How do you rationalise a buyer's thinking? How do you rationalise a vendor's thinking? And I think it's an art that I think is going away based largely on this growing trend of, people watch $1 Million Listing New York and think that I can make one phone call, one text message, get a buyer up $1 million. It's just not reality.
Gain insights with exclusive conversations from real estate professionals about buying, selling and investing across Australia.
And it is a Real Estate Tuesday. We are in Bundaberg with Brent, talking all things Bundaberg this morning. And you were just saying before the break that Mackay, a little bit more expensive than Bundaberg. Let's just have a breakdown on that, as well as the median house and unit price, if you've got those handy.
Yeah, of course, mate. So from my perspective, I will speak to Bundaberg traditionally, of course, and typically we were extremely competitive and a lot cheaper than pretty much any of those capital hubs as you get outside the southeast corner, so Rockhampton, Mackay, Townsville, Cairns. But our median house prices jumped up for residential anyway, well and truly over that kind of 500,000 mark just in the last few months. We've had another squeeze here in Bundaberg 2024. We're bucking the trend a little bit, where a lot of markets have cooled and slowed down just a fraction. Bundaberg has kept charging forward thanks to incredible amounts of investors investing in our part of the world. So we're looking at, just over 500,000 for a residential property here now. And the new units are obviously a little bit cheaper in Bundaberg. So your median house price on your units is over 300,000 now. We do have an interesting market there, though, because our suburbs vary greatly depending on things like flood affected, socioeconomic issues. But Bundaberg itself, there are approximately those median house prices you're after.
Now, you mentioned about the investors coming in, so that's always a good sign. What about infrastructural builds? Anything happening?
Yeah, look, we are spoilt for room to grow, and I think that's crucial when you look at some of the capital centres and a real lack of ability to continue to expand at the rate they are. Bundaberg is a beautiful part of the world for aquaculture and agriculture were just a gorgeous part of the Australian landscape. So from our perspective, we've been spoilt with that. Your red fields, cane fields, all those sorts of things. But now we're starting to see a lot more urban infrastructure go into those areas. So we're growing towards our east of Bundaberg, which is towards the Coral Coast. Most people would know possibly of Bargara, which is probably the crown jewel as coastal townships go along our coastline. Bargara is growing to its west. So we're starting to see a bit of a sandwich between Bundaberg and Bargara where they're growing together. I can remember times when I was a little fella, there was not a house in sight in the 10, 15 minutes it takes you to get to the coast from Bundaberg. And now you're driving almost neck and neck with houses half the way out there. So there's still plenty of room, as I said, to grow even to the west and the south of Bundaberg proper. Bundaberg North is limited due to our flooding in 2013, but that's something that we've managed to overcome in working with the government and local authorities as far as getting ways around that to develop further on the north side, because it's a beautiful part of the world and super convenient to get back into the CBD of Bundy.
You have a look at Bundaberg, you have a look at Mackay, and then you add into the equation Hervey Bay. All of these areas have significantly grown. And the case can be argued it's a good thing that all of three are actually growing kind of equally, maybe. I mean, that might be an arguable, contentious thing for me to say because you're the local, you know it better than me. But the whole thing in terms of growth and that appeal factor with people moving in, it has to help all three areas.
Correct. Yeah, I couldn't agree more. I must admit, as a local Bundaberg person, I've seen Hervey Bay probably get ahead of us on numerous occasions because I've had some wonderful broadcasting of what they have as far as tourism goes. And Bundaberg has all those things here too. So it's nice to see some local businesses and things fight back and say, right, well, Bundaberg's the place to be now. And we've got a beautiful port, we've got a beautiful coastline. There's plenty of room for growth out there. There's some amazing local businesses doing some incredible things. I mean, I was recently travelling as far as Scotland away from Bundaberg and I ordered a ginger beer and out come the famous Bundaberg ginger beer. So we're on the map and it's a nice thing to see. But absolutely, the three places you mentioned, they're growing quickly because people feel now that there's better value potentially in these regions and a much simpler and slightly slower lifestyle than they're used to in Brisbane or Sydney or Gold Coast proper.
Now, Brent, a lot of first-time home buyers, they are listening all the time for spots that suddenly present themselves on their radar. Just talk about the ones that are moving in from, perhaps not just from the state, but also interstate first-time buyers. What's happening in that space?
Absolutely. So the two key factors that seem to be driving so much growth in that first home buyer space, and our first home buyers seem to be, well, some of them have got their bits and pieces together at the early 20s, but a lot of them are late 20s, early 30s, and really being a first home buyer in Melbourne, Sydney or Brisbane is an affordable or a feasible option for them in the next few years. And now they've got kids on the way and things like that. They're starting to want to knuckle down and get a property. So Bundaberg's super affordable. We have an amazing amount of schools and facilities and sports clubs that are right at the fingertips of all of these people that are moving here. But I think as well, something that, especially during COVID and times like that, where people were sitting around and thinking about the weather a lot more and, geez, do I want to live in -2 degrees in winter or do I want to live a beautiful weather where Bundaberg's median temperature in our winter months comes down to about 20 degrees. So it's a phenomenal place to live. It's been compared with Honolulu and places like that. So I think they love the lifestyle. You can be outdoors 365 days a year in Bundaberg, unless it's obviously bucketing down with rain, which we do get occasionally.
Well, I reckon they should put you on the tourism board for Bundaberg. That was great.
Thank you, mate. I am a passionate local. I wasn't born and bred in Bundaberg, but I certainly moved here as a young man and found a love for the region, as I say, for those exact same reasons I speak to people now in my day job. I absolutely love living here. Everything's 5 minutes away. If you still want to buy your fruit and veg on the side of the road, you can. We have so many wonderful farming communities. And Bundaberg itself is just so livable.
Fantastic. And just before we go, is there anybody that you want to give a shout out to in Bundaberg?
Oh, look, obviously I wouldn't be here today if it wasn't for my family. RealWay is a family business. So we set that up in 2005 and somehow I'm going on 20 years as a real estate agent next year. I don't know where that time's gone, but I'm very grateful to my community and anyone who does listen to this from Bundaberg, please flick me a text or an email and if there's anything you want to add. But I absolutely love the region and I can't speak highly enough of it and its future and the potential we still have here today. It seems a bit more expensive than it did 3 or 4 years ago, but absolutely very, very happy with where we are and progress that we're seeing in our community. And I think most people would agree with that for sure. So great place to live. Don't be afraid to come up here and check it out.
All right, so that is Brent. Brent, thank you for coming on to the Real Estate Breakfast and enjoy your day.
Absolutely. You too, mate. My pleasure.
We connect you to the best real estate information across Australia. The Real Estate Podcast.